Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Jan and I'm back with some more vibes for all you. And as you could tell, the light is changing in here because the sun is coming out, the sun is going away, so it's gonna it's gonna change a little bit here. The weather is still kind of chilly here. It's like 40 something degrees now. That's freezing for me. I'm from the tropics. But anyway, I ain't gonna talk too much. This one here is called Why is Germany Such an Industrial Leader? Yeah, so we're gonna go in there and see what's going on with this. Let's YouTube and simmer.
Germany is the place where BMW, Rammstein and FKK, that nudist culture, were born. Nevertheless, Germany has something even more important than all of these things, and that is the fact that it is the world's ultimate factory. Yep, you heard that right. And I can guess what you're probably thinking right now. Wait a minute, Simon, isn't China the country where TV screens, mobile phones, and, well, practically every good under the sun is made? Well, the thing is, that's not entirely true. Now, of course, China does lead the charge when it comes to exports, but do you know what? In order to manufacture all of those products, they need to import a lot of things from abroad. Germany, instead, sells way more than what it buys, in fact.
See, that's an interesting point, and that's why I'm always saying we need each other. In order to make themselves be this big industrial power, China has got to import stuff to make it. Parts for everything comes from somewhere else. And I think that's where conquering countries that are considered lesser than and taking the natural resources and stuff to make the product to sell back to them. I remember back when I was growing up, they used to say that European countries will buy our cocoa and nutmeg and then sell it back to us as candy or chocolate bars and stuff like that. So in essence, we are buying back our own stuff. That's what they said. When they were trying to become self-sufficient and make our own stuff. What government was. They'll say this to people. Of course, it's probably true. But it's all politics. But like he said, there, China needed to import stuff to make the stuff that they need to export, which means we need each other. Nobody's self-sufficient because you can't find all the materials you need to make stuff where you are. You need the whole world for all that material.
1 out of every 10 products sold on the international market is made in this country, which has a population 15 times smaller than China. Yes, we all know those big German car companies like BMW, Audi or Volkswagen, but there is way more than that. If you don't believe me, well, just consider your mobile phone. And I know, on the back it's going to say something like, assembled in the People's Republic of China, but I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about if you open up that phone, you're going to find a bunch of microchips inside. As an example here, that chip that makes your phone tilt, when you rotate it and the screen matches up, that's probably most likely made by a German company called Bosch SensorTech. But not only that, many of the robots used inside these Chinese factories assembling these phones are probably made in Germany.
See, here's an interesting thought that I think of. It's kind of like this, okay? Now, China, they manufacture the actual product, but the parts doesn't come from there. It's kind of like people saying, I can cook, and they go to the store and they buy stuff like a box of macaroni and cheese, and they compile it and say, oh, we cooked. You sort of kind of cooked, but you didn't cook from scratch. You know what I mean? You compile the parts and present it. It's not your parts. You didn't buy the elbows, you didn't manufacture the elbows or nothing like that. But that's going too micro there. But what I'm saying is, they bought the parts for it and they make it. Now, they didn't cook it from scratch. When I say cook it from scratch, I mean they buy the separate elbows, the separate cheese, grate the cheese, do all that work and stuff. They just bought a box with it, stick it in the water, put it all together, boom, it's ready. People say that's for quick, but for quickness, but That's not cooking to me. Cooking is, going and making most of the ingredients that you need to put together. So that's just breaking it down a little bit there. They got the parts elsewhere and they put it together and they ship it out.
In other words, in Germany, they manufacture the things that go inside of other things that are manufactured by things that are made in Germany. And now you might be wondering, how is any of that possible? I mean, factories, they should be built in places with cheap labour costs, right? I mean, how is it possible that Germany, with relatively high salaries, is such an industrial powerhouse? Well, the good news is that today we're going to answer that question for you, but as always, before we get into all of that, let's take a look back at the history.
Ouch! I really want to visit there. Visit.
After World War II, Europe was pretty darn destroyed. Countries like Italy, France, Western Germany, which was the capitalist side of Germany, they got a massive money grant from their good friend Uncle Sam. But wait just a minute, because each of these countries used that money in totally different ways.
The French president, for instance, was this guy that you'd see on TV, General Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle, remember him? Well,
De Gaulle came from the military.
Stories about
and was
him.
No friend of private companies. His political creed, the so-called dirigisme, was about nationalizing big businesses and leading the whole country's economy as if it was an army.
Well, in Western Germany, they chose a totally different path. Both the Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and his finance minister Ludwig Erhard spent years thinking about their own economic system. It was a mixture between the competition of free market capitalism and the safety net provided by the government. They then decided to give this system what is probably the worst name in the world ever. They called it ordoliberalism or social market economy.
Competition is the most promising means to achieve and secure prosperity. Ludwig Erhard.
In other words, while de Gaulle centralized the economy in Paris, Konrad Adenauer designed a system where the government would put into place a set of conditions, but the other players would make their own decisions. This explains why in Germany, trade unions, regional governments, and of course companies are quite so important. And so now you might be wondering, what are the keys that are needed for a system like this to work, and, well, has it really worked out at all? Well, let's get right into that.
A stable currency.
I'm pretty sure at some point you've heard some economists saying that devaluing a currency boosts exports, right?
For instance, imagine we have a shoe manufacturing facility in Mexico, and we want to sell a pair of shoes to the American market. Let's say the price of these shoes is 2,000 Mexican pesos. At the time of making this video, those 2,000 pesos is equal to about 110 US dollars. But let's say that, all of a sudden, the Mexican central bank decides to print money and therefore devalue its currency. From one day to the next, the pair of shoes could be worth 90 US dollars. Therefore, it'd be easier to sell these shoes abroad.
Now, this is a theory that's actually supported by...
Never really understood that.
Okay. Now, the Germans, they actually decided to do the exact opposite, and for the later part of the 20th century, the German mark was actually one of the most stable currencies in the entire world. And this might lead you to wonder, well, how is it possible that Germany could export so much when
They
their
did the
products were
opposite.
not actually that cheap? Alright, well, let's go back to our shoes example for just a moment, but actually this time I'm going to tell you the story of a real company. This is a company from the north of Germany and it's called Desma. It's not a particularly big business, it has around 200 staff. Now, this company started right after the war, being founded in 1946, and they specialized in making machines for shoe manufacturing. Now, in order to do this, they needed to import lots of machines from the United States, and thanks to having a stable currency, the price for importing those machines, it was relatively low. They then decided to rent a facility, because at the end of the day, since there was no inflation, rents would not go up, and they could calculate the future cost of this space reliably. But it wasn't only that. Since German companies couldn't offer lower prices, Desma had to innovate. And in 1960, they invested in state-of-the-art technologies to manufacture rubber-sole shoes. 10 years later, Desma was the world leader in PVC soles. It's in fact likely that the soles of the shoes you're wearing right now are made by a Desma machine. This company, with 200 staff, now sells to every country in the world, including China.
Wow.
And you know, this
Not
is
even
just
big.
one example of the thousands of small and medium-sized companies, the so-called Mittelstand, that made up Germany.
The Mittelstand's success has attracted admiring glances from the rest of Europe, but it's built on foundations that may be hard to copy.
And yes, I know, the German mark is a thing of the past, because in 2002, the Germans, they abandoned this currency and they adopted the euro. But think about it, while other countries like Spain, they were using weaker countries before, Germany had a strong currency for decades. That means that in 2002, German companies were already more competitive than anyone else's. But again, hold on a minute, because there's many other things that can explain the success of the German model, so let's dig into these now.
Let's dig.
The educational system.
Now, I can probably guess what you're going to say. Come on, Simon, Germany isn't really famous for its educational system, is it? And to some extent, that's right. If you look at the PISA report, Germany isn't even ranking inside the top 10. But then again, German students managed to find a job right after they finished their studies. So, with not such a great educational system, well, why is this happening?
Please inform.
The answer to that actually lies in their vocational training system. Now, let's imagine you're a high school student in Germany and you don't want to go to university. So instead, you decide to study to become a plumber. Well, from the first moment, you're already going to be working for a company which has an arrangement with the school. This means from Monday to Wednesday, you go to a classroom, and from Thursday to Friday, you go to the company's workshop.
Okay, great idea.
There, you would be trained by the experienced plumbers, and you would get a salary of between $300 to $500 a month. And this salary is actually pretty important because it means that the company that are paying you really want to make you work. I mean, otherwise the firm's pretty much just throwing money away. And the outcome of this is that German students know how it is to be in a real-life working environment. In fact,
See, that's a brilliant idea.
Where they did their training. And of course, those German firms.
That's a brilliant idea. Meanwhile, you have student athletes here making no money, a group of people making billions, but of course they just changed that with little caveats in there, you know. It's not like they're gonna pay them out money or something like that, you know. They feel free to go out and make money on their own. But then meanwhile here, like I was saying, you know, there companies come in and they pay the students, from what I'm understanding here. You know, what are the incentive you need? You're teaching them to know how to work and make money. You're also probably going to teach them somehow how to manage that money. You know what I mean? Or by the time they get old enough to be out on their own, they pretty much know how to manage money because they've been having money for the longest while. Which would work here with art, you know, like I say, in here, no. For the longest while, no, you athletes, you are student athletes. Students aren't supposed to have money. What do you mean? You're supposed to just play the sport. If you get hurt, we toss you aside. We find somebody else to bring in the money. It's one reason why I quit, man. It was a job without pay. But here we are with a whole different outlook on the way to treat people.
Exchange
keep watching.
to get well-trained workers. And now that we're on the subject of workers, let's move on to another key piece of the German system.
German trade unions.
In other countries like France or Spain, most of the labour laws are made by parliament, but that's not the case in Germany. Until 2015, Germans didn't even have a minimum wage. Salaries were negotiated by trade unions and employers.
In Germany, syndicates are extremely important. Actually, those big companies like Audi or BMW with more than 2,000 workers are required to have union representatives on their administrative board. Consider this. Siemens has 10 shareholder representatives on their board, and therefore, they must have 10 people representing the workers.
Remember this one, because it makes a big difference. In Spain, there's an example of another country. A big company like Telefonica has no trade union representatives on their board of administration. Trade unions can only participate in another body, which is called the company council, and they can only speak about matters that affect salaries or working conditions. Now, by contrast, in Germany, trade unions have a voice on every decision that the company makes. When Siemens wants to start operating in a new market or launch a new product, they have to ask the shareholders, of course, but they also have to ask their trade union representatives.
Yeah, the people who are taking care of the people.
Now you might be wondering, isn't this just bad news for the company? I mean, we
No.
pretty much take it for granted that unions and companies not exactly best friends. Well, it doesn't actually have to be that way. Think about it for a moment. Thanks to this setup, Siemens and BMW's workers, they know whether a company is doing well or whether they're losing money. And of course, when things are going bad for the company, they can make compromises,
Man.
like reducing their working hours instead of being fired.
That would not work here. See, the company don't really want the workers to know how much they're making, even though you could go find out. But they know they're not going to go find out, because if they know, then they want more themselves. Here is union busting. There's a certain online company that I worked for a long time, and where I live here, they came in like thunder to put down call centers here, right? Come to find out, the reason why they came here is because the place where they were, the workers there were fighting to start a union, and they promised the workers that they weren't going to move. When the workers were coming close to get the union, whoop, they moved them to places where they know, hey, they don't care. These people are broke. They need the jobs. Let's go there. See, they give you incentives. Here, they beat you down to the point where you absolutely need this job. You absolutely need this job. So you're going to stay, regardless to what they throw at you. Regardless if they cut your hours. You know what I mean? And this is going on forever. Forever. You know, so I don't know how that's going to get switched over. You know, and then you have unions, and they really don't do anything. It's a job. I have a union that's sending me stuff on how to borrow money. You're not supposed to tell me how to borrow money from you, telling you low interest rate, put me more in debt than I need to be. You're supposed to help me make enough money so I don't have to do that. That's the point of a union. That is the point of a union. Get me to the point where I don't have to do that. I don't have to go into debt. You know what I'm saying? But they don't. Because the unions has become a job. You know, they make big money doing it, as long as they, so if somebody's making money and living a nice life, they want to maintain that. So they're not going to buck the company. They're going to buck the people who they're supposed to be taking care of. Because they don't want to lose that cushy job they have in the union. It's crazy how things are, huh?
To cut working hours at German facilities.
This explains why, during the financial crisis of 2008, German companies didn't fire a large number of people. And, well, this is good for the workers, and it's good for the company.
Happy workers.
But wait
Makes
a
a
minute,
company
because
grow.
I know what you're thinking right now. Those German trade unions are collaborating with big capitalists in order to exploit the workers. Right? I mean, it must be happening. Well, the answer there is actually certainly not.
The reality is that the average wage in Germany is around $3,400 a month. That's higher than the state of New York. And that's in a country with a pretty affordable cost of living. A flat in Berlin is about half the price of a flat in New York City.
And
Yo, $3,400 a month. Some people barely make 800, man. Most people barely make 800 a month. That's because they cut hours. Wow. I know that I kind of got silent there. That just hit me there, man. Can you imagine making $3,400 a month?
And despite all of this, Germany maintains its position as the third biggest country when it comes to exports. So now the question becomes, do you think your country could benefit from the German model, or perhaps you think these policies are impossible to implement elsewhere? Please leave us your answers in the comment section.
Oh, I'll give you my
Meanwhile,
answer.
if you do want to know about another YouTube channel that covers geopolitics, you can check out the Caspian Report. It's a great channel. We'll put a link in the description below. And of course, do not forget to visit our friends at the Region.
I'll give you my answer right now, bro. Nah, it ain't gonna work here. It's not. Because the people's mentality have to change. You know what I'm saying? Because they think whatever the big companies do, they deserve because, they were smart enough to get rich. Forget the fact that a lot of these big companies is passed down from generation to generation. Their parents or grandparents or great grandparents was smart enough to get rich. A lot of them just inherit that stuff. The mentality of the people is what's keeping stuff from getting better. See, where I work every day, I hear one worker complaining about the next worker and going to the managers about the worker, you know what I mean? And I'll give you and then the same politricksters that creating the situation where they don't have anything. I see them come into the store and everybody's running up to them. Oh sir, yes sir. Oh sir, yes sir. Oh, you're a great person. You're a really good person. How come nothing's getting fixed? And of course they smile, you know, and thinking, you know, the cheese. So this could work, because generally speaking, now they say go to trade schools, and but the sinister thing about going to trade schools, in my opinion, from my perspective of watching it, and I try to explain that to somebody there, they tell you to go to trade schools. Don't go to universities, because universities are gonna poison your mind. That's the narrative that's going on, right? Go to trade schools so that way you can do a trade and get a good job. No, we know that most of the people who run for office are rich people who own businesses, big businesses. Okay, so they're telling you this, while those same rich people are bribing people to get their kids into the best schools. So why are they doing that? Because they want your kid to be the worker bees for their kids. I'm not saying everybody should go to college. That's not what I'm saying. Some people are quite content with just getting a trade. But when they start telling you that's what you should do, then you start questioning, okay, what's the motives here? I guess that's just me. I just don't trust politricksters. That's just the way it is. If they're telling me to do something, I always want to look behind why they're telling me. Because I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, it ain't got nothing to do with you being better. But we fall for it, or they fall for it. It's a crazy situation, but now we know why Germany is one of an industrial leader. Because they start treating from high school, you know, if you want to do that, go do that, and they help you do it. Not you should do this and you have to do this, but hey, you gonna pay for it. We don't know how, because we sure as hell don't pay you enough to pay for it. But you know, oh yeah, take on some loans and things that you're gonna pay back. You know what I mean? In the meantime, the loan company is slipping money to the lobbyists and thing. You know what I mean? That's how it works, bruh. I ain't lying. That $3,400 a month just going to be. I never made $3,400 a month, ever. Hey, listen, I'm done ranting. But I like that $3,400 hit me, boom. I couldn't imagine. Anyway, man, I'll leave a link in the description to this video. You know, go check it out and take, see what I go on. I'm gonna also leave cards of videos that you should watch. You know what I mean? I did one about why Walmart left Germany. You know what I mean? I'll leave it in the link, and you could go watch that too. Okay, y'all take care of each other. All right, cool runnings.